I was drafted in 1942. I was 17 years old. And I went to school in Oklahoma, State. I was born in Texas. But the Buffalo Soldiers, a lot of people don't know, there were black cavalrymen in the Confederate Army, and there were black cavalrymen in the Northern Army. So in 1866, right after the Civil War, the U.S. government formed an all-black cavalry regiment, which was the 2nd Cavalry Division. We composed of all black, and most of them, were ex-slaves, and most of them couldn't read or write. But we had white officers. We didn't have any black officers. The only black officer we had was a chaplain. He was a captain, but all our officers were white. And I was stationed down in Camp Lockett, California, right across the border from Tecate, Mexico. And during 1942 and 1943, we guarded the border, just like the Border Patrol did, but we were on horseback. And at that time, it didn't bother the Latinos. We were looking for German and Japanese spies coming across the border through Mexico. And my platoon, we caught 7 Germans coming across the border. That was in 1943. And they sent us over, we were disbanded in 1944, they sent us overseas. So all of the black soldiers, the Buffalo soldiers, I was in the cavalry reconnaissance. We had light tanks, so we were attached to General Patton, but we were still separated. Some of the others went to General Patton, and they heard about the Red Ball Express. Most of all of those drivers were black Buffalo soldiers. And some were in the anti-aircraft division, some were in the port battalion, and some were in the parachute battalion, were all Buffalo soldiers during World War II. And like I say, we landed in Casablanca, Africa, in January 1944, and we were disbanded. And I was in the cavalry reconnaissance. We were attached to General Patton's tank battalion, but we were still separated. Everything was separated then.
The holiday known as Juneteenth is not celebrated by the Black Seminoles of Brackenville, Texas, in the classic sense. When President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, the Black Seminoles were already free. They had won their freedom 25 years earlier through direct combat with U.S. forces during the Second Seminole War. A little over 500 formerly enslaved people were allowed to go free. If they stopped fighting and immigrated to Oklahoma with their Indian allies. This agreement was entitled the Articles of Capitulation, or popularly known as Jessup's Proclamation, named after Major General Thomas Sidney Jessup. It, just like Lincoln's proclamation, was an example of battlefield legislation done under war powers. In 1849, due to pressure from the slave industry, America passed the Fugitive Slave Act, permitting slave owners to pursue their former slaves even into Indian territory. The following year, a contingent of Black Seminoles left the United States, entering into Mexico. La gente de México eran bienvenidos con los brazos abiertos a nosotros antepasados. The people of Mexico gave a welcome with open arms it was right after the Mexican-American War, and forces were pushing on Mexico. They needed people to come in and help act as border guards. So they welcomed them with open arms. Mexico needed border guards, and they were glad to have these veteran guerrilla fighters on their side of the border. After the Civil War had ended and slavery was abolished in the U.S., the Black Seminoles returned. One of our most important dates was July the 4th, 1870. On that day, we chose America as immigrants and splashed back across the Rio Grande to become special forces for the Buffalo Soldiers in a unit known as the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts. That unit won 4 Congressional Medals of Honor in defense of their country, the United States of America.